Hi, and welcome to the Clarity 16.1.1 Supportability and Feature Training session. My name's Catherine Ellis, and I'm a Product Manager with Clarity. Clarity 16.1.1 Staffing Updates. What's new with the staffing updates? General staffing updates, which apply to the Staff module and the Staffing workspace, provide the user with the ability to see all the resources associated with a team that's been allocated. Filters that exist on the Staffing object for Resource Manager and Investment Manager have been converted from a string to a lookup, so users now can select multiple resources or current user. Within the Staffing workspace, Allocations Timeline, UX treatment enhancements have been added to allow the user better usability in managing the data in the Allocations Timeline. There is the ability to maximize the top or bottom panel with persistence for the user, new color treatments for the over-under allocation indicators. Also, the button has been removed for showing either staffed or unstaffed investments, and now both appear without using the button. And then finally, new enhancements have been added to allow the user to quickly select either resources, roles, or teams to add to an investment, or to quickly select an investment to add to a resource. So why are the staffing updates important? Adding a flyout subtab that lists out the resources associated with a team provides enhanced usability in the staffing activities to have that information you need to make staffing decisions. Converting the Staff Resource Manager and Investment Manager fields from a string to a lookup improves the user experience by providing an easier method to filter data. Improvements in the Staffing workspace are provided to expand the functionality and improve the user experience. This brings the level of functional parity between the Staffing plan and the Staffing workspace closer. The easy quick select action to add staff or investments allows the managers to perform staffing activities quickly. Having both staffed and unstaffed investments in the same list allows the managers to view investments across different investment types. A combination of these enhancements for quick select, showing staffed and unstaffed investments, and the ability to maximize the allocations by investment layout gives the manager a focused layout to perform multiple actions in one view. As we near the end of the Staffing Plan telescopic workspace, we're continuing to enhance the Staffing workspace allocations timeline. We're planning to address the remaining items, and more details can be found in the latest Clarity Feature Functional Comparison Matrix. A note about the Staffing Plan workspace. An advanced notice was announced last year with the release of Clarity 16.0.2 to allow your organization a smooth transition to the new Staffing workspace due to the deprecation of the Staffing Plan workspace. This workspace will no longer be enhanced, and it is planned for removal from the product in Release 16.1.2, scheduled for May of 2023. General Staffing Updates. For any staffed team, a list of the resources associated with the team can now be found in the Details Flyout Team tab. This tab is only visible for team resources. A team allocation record can be identified by using a filter for Staff Type equals Team. In the next few slides, we'll show where you can find this new tab in these staffing areas. In the Staff grid, in the Staffing workspace, the user has filtered for Staff Type equals Team. Landing on a row and opening the details, you can now see the Team tab and all the resources associated with that team. In the Allocations timeline in the Staffing workspace, by looking at either the Allocations by Resource or Allocations by Investment layout, when you expand the row grouping and select a particular row that is a team by using the filtering staff type equals team, and open the flyout details, either having it docked to the right or below, you'll see the new team tab and all the resources listed out for that specific team. Navigating inside an investment and going into the staff module, the user can look at the team tab when selecting a row for a team and seeing all the resources associated with that team. When the Staff tab has been added into the blueprint for a hierarchy, the user can look at the team information for an allocated row based on a team. By selecting the Staff type equals team, you can see the rows where there is a team allocated to an investment, and then opening the Details flyout, you can see the Team tab and all the associated resources. The Staffing Resource Manager and Investment Manager fields have been converted from a string to a lookup. Now they can be used with all staffing areas, which allows the user to filter for multiple managers or to use the Smart Filter for current user. It is especially nice to have both lookups available on the staffing object tied to allocations when filtering as an alternative to using the Common Investment Object Manager field or the Resource Object Manager field in the staffing workspace. As you can see from the example on the staffing workspace, where there are different objects associated with the staffing object, that there are a few manager fields. The Common Investment Manager field and the Resource Manager field already were defined as lookup types, but now the staffing object has the lookups as well. In this demonstration, you'll see how to view the staffed team resources from the Details flyout. You'll also be able to filter staffing allocation records by a resource manager or investment manager. We have a staffing module inside of investments such as projects, ideas, and custom investment types. We also have staffing in the new staffing workspace, and within the hierarchy we also have a staff module. What I'm going to show you today is that when you have allocations for team staff, you can now get more information about that team and who the resources are assigned to the team. When you're looking at a particular row inside the staff module, you can open the detail and you can see that there's two sub-tabs for details and conversations. If you're looking at it for a team, staff type equals team, you see now a new tab. This tab lists all the resources that are assigned to that team. And you can show the flyout either docked to the right or below. You can expand the view and you can see all the members for the team. You can export it to Excel and do other standard things with this grid. Now the reason that we have this is so that you can look at that information, and as I said, you can see it here, you can see it in the staffing workspace and in the hierarchies as well. The next thing I'm going to show you is the two fields on the staffing object itself that have been converted from a string to a lookup for use in a filter. So inside a staff module, if we search for manager, you'll see that the staffing object has 4 manager fields. The two fields that have been converted to a string are Investment Manager and Resource Manager. The other two were already lookups, and so we just converted these two remaining ones to lookups from a string. So if we add them to the grid, there are now 2 ways to filter for these values. We can do it here, and you can see it is now a lookup, and it also has the Smart option for current user. Same with the Resource Manager. And if you actually select someone, let's pick Rosie Miller, it will go ahead and add the chip to the filter section at the top. So you can add the filter here, or you can add it from the column, and it will now have the lookup. So it used to be a string, and you could only search by a pattern, and now you can search by a lookup. Let's look at the staffing workspace and the hierarchies, because this will be important in those areas because there's more than just the staff object involved in those views. So let's navigate over to the staffing workspace, and then this will apply to both the allocations timeline and the staff grid. So I've showed you the grid on the staff module. If we look at the column section here, you can see there's a lot of different object types, not just the staffing one. So you have the staffing, you have the common investment, resource, and then all the other specific investment types. So if I type manager here, you can see there's the common investment manager field, there's the resource booking manager and resource manager field, and then if you open the staffing, you see those 4 fields there. Now the investment manager and resource manager has already been added to this particular view, so let's go ahead and look at that. And if we filter for it, we can see now it is a lookup. It used to be a string and now it is a lookup. So I can pick anyone I want here. So let's pick Ray Fowler. I want to see all his people. And you can see that it added the chip. Or I can go to the top. And if I type manager here, you can also see the segregation of the different object types as well. So I can add the investment manager from the staffing object. I don't want to add the common investment manager or resource manager. You could if you want, because those are also lookups. But if you're just looking at the investment, the allocations, then you want to look at it from this field. And so then you can select a person like Patrick Clark as an investment manager, and then it'll reduce the list some more. And that's how you would do it. And then if you go and do the allocation timeline, you have the same capability here. You can see staffing has investment manager, and it's a lookup. And if we look for manager again, you can see resource manager. And it is a lookup as well. Let's go to the hierarchies because it is a little bit different. And in the hierarchies, it has the staff object and just the common investment object. It doesn't have all the other objects. So here, if we collapse this, you can see it just has the staffing object and common investment object. We don't even have the resource object. So this is why it's also important to have this field on the staffing object. So now we can filter by resource manager or investment manager and do the same thing. We can filter from the column heading, or we can add the chip to the filter criteria. So we can add that, and there you go. So that is the new enhancement for converting the resource manager and investment manager on the staffing object from a string to a lookup. Staffing workspace updates. New controls for viewing the top or bottom panels within the allocations timeline have been introduced. For the divider line, multiple dots in the middle allow you to manually drag the divider line up and down to reposition it. From within the middle, down arrows indicate that you want to move the divider line down to maximize the top panel, and the up arrows indicate that you want to move the divider line up to maximize the bottom panel. The restore buttons, regardless of whether they're at the top or the bottom, will reposition the divider line back into the middle in the position that you last had it in the middle. Whatever position that you were last on, whether you maximized or repositioned the divider line, it will be persisted for that user. On this slide, we have a comparison of the bottom portion, which is the prior release, and the top, which has the new changes. As you can see, on the bottom, we had a button called All Staffed Investments. This button allowed the user to look at all allocations across different investment types where there are staffed investments, but it didn't include any unstaffed investments. In order to see unstaffed investments, you would have to select a particular type of investment, and then once you did that, you could see both staffed and unstaffed. So in the prior release, you could not have the ability to look at both staffed and unstaffed investments across the different investment types. Well, we've changed that and we've removed the button. So now when you go into the application, you can see both staffed and unstaffed across all investments. The other changes we've done are mostly for UX treatments. We changed the colorization of the over allocation by changing it from a little red dot to having the number colored and a little triangle to show that it's over allocated. We've also added a green coloring of the number to indicate under allocation, which was not there before on the allocation rows. We didn't make any changes to the resource histogram, so the colorization of that remains the same. We also made a change to the grouping row on the allocations by resource. So if you focus your attention to the far right and you'll compare the top to the bottom, you'll see that the style for the grouping bar has changed from the bottom where it looks similar to a investment timeline bar to a different style on the top, which looks more like a grouping bar to show that it's Joyce has a bunch of investments allocated to her for that duration. New capability has been added to the Staffing Workspace Allocations timeline to quickly select and add staff to an investment or add an investment to a resource role or team. The user will right-click on the grouping row to display a floating modal, which presents the user with the default allocation field and the lookup selection boxes. Once the user has added one or more items, clicking the Close button will dismiss the floating modal. The default allocation field starts out showing 0% for a new user, and when it is changed, the last value entered will be persisted for that user. This persistence will appear on the floating modals for adding staff or adding investments, and it will persist on the modal that appears when the user drags a resource role or team from the resource histogram up to the investment. The administrator can change the default allocation field label through the Administration Attributes workspace. In this demonstration, you'll see how to enjoy the updated UX treatments in the Staffing workspace. You'll have the ability to see both staffed and unstaffed investments. And you'll see how to add allocations quickly in the Staffing Allocations timeline. In this demonstration, we'll focus on the allocations timeline in the Staffing workspace. We now have new controls for the divider line to manually move the divider line up and down, or to maximize the bottom panel. You get a restore button at the top. It'll restore it back to the last position that you manually adjusted your middle bar. And if I manually adjust it again and I want to maximize the top and then restore it, it'll remember where I was there. It also remembers whatever your last position is when you navigate away from the page or when you log out of the system. So if I maximize it to show the top panel and I go to the staff grid and return, it remembered that. Or if I log out, log back in, or navigate to any other page, it will remember that for my user. Let's take a look now at the colorization of the over-under allocated staff members. So let's take a look at this investment here. Has a few different people. It has some teams and some roles. And so if we look at this digital team, at the bottom, you see when I click on it, it automatically gives that. So you can see it matches. It's red, red. So they're 100% over their availability. If I click on the mobile team, you can see that it matches the colorization there as well. So the calculation for determining the over-under colorization hasn't changed in this workspace yet. It still determines the color as 100%. If it's over 100%, it's red. If it's under 100%, it's green. We are going to introduce some controls in a later release that'll allow you to define a percentage over or under before it starts turning the color to red or green. If it's white or 0, not allocated, then it will be white. So the next thing that I want to show you is you'll notice the button is no longer there for the unstaffed investments, and we're on the allocations by investment view, and you can see that there are some investments that have a little triangle and some that don't. This is one clue that there are no staff on the unstaffed investments. So for example, we have these investments here that have no staff and I can't expand it. Also, another clue is that we have a field called has staff, and this is on the common investment object, and it'll have a check mark if there are staff members on that investment. So the one we were just looking at had staff, and you can see others that have staff has the check mark, and you can see the ones that don't have staff are empty and don't have a check mark in that column. Now in past releases and still currently, if you wanted to add staff in this workspace, the only way that you could do it is by drag and drop. So we have a resource here. Let's say we have Erin, and we wanted to add her to an investment. We could take and drag her up to the investment, and you get a modal that defaults to using the investment start and finish, or you can toggle it off and put in specific dates, and you can set the allocation. The last time I used this drag and drop, it was set to 80%. So it remembers that each time you utilize this. So if I were going to allocate Erin, I want to really only allocate her 50% to this investment. I'll go ahead and add it. And so you can see now the triangle has appeared and the check mark has appeared, and if I expand it, you'll see that she has appeared on the investment. So it's like that's fine, but now we have a new enhanced ability to add resource roles or teams quicker. So let's maximize our top panel. We don't need the bottom panel anymore with this new method. So all we have to do is right click and pick add staff. And you can see 50% was the last default allocation value I used. Regardless of whether I use it here or on the drag and drop, it will remember what the very last value was that I had. So now I want to add a couple more. I want to add some roles actually, and I want these roles to be like at 25% instead of 50%. So let's pick a role, and we'll pick an architect. And you can see it added the architect. I want to pick a team. Let's pick a team of digital team. Team. There we go. And I want to pick another resource. Let's pick Isaac. And so when you do this, it adds them all at 25%. And you can see it fills in the information, and then you can dismiss this when you're finished. And you can go on to the next one, and when you call it up, it remembers it was at 25%. Now that's adding staff to an investment. But let's say you wanted to add an investment to a particular resource. You know who the resource is, and you're already working in the allocations by resource. So let's switch our view to allocations by resource. And let's go over to Joyce. And when we're on top of the grouping row here for Joyce, we right click and we say add investment. And you can see it remembered the 25%, but I want to allocate her 75% to this alert controls investment. And it added the alert controls investment there. So you can see, and it's got the default allocation of 75%, and you can see she's been allocated, and it's like, oh, well, maybe that was the wrong one. Maybe I picked the wrong one. Let's close this and delete it. So you could still do all the other activities you need to do. Or once you add, let's add a different one now. Let's add 75% and pick the other one, alert error message. So that was at 75%. That's the right one. And let's say I added it and it's like, okay, but I really want her only to work on it. I want to reallocate. So I want her to only work on it in February. I don't want her to go all the way to the end. So we'll only allow her to have it go up through mid-March. And we'll keep it at 75%. It will reallocate it. And then it should change and update the information there. And now you can see her total overall allocations, and she's still over allocated there. So if I want to go and then edit her allocations, I can get the grid up here, and then I can manually rebalance between the three investments because she's over allocated. I can manually balance between these using the different hours I want to put her at here. We're using hours in the unit of measure. If I was using percent availability, then I could split it up evenly by using a percent, or I can just change the numbers for hours based on what she needs to do to get the job done. And that's how you do a quick add using the new functionality of the floating modal for quick add. This concludes the staffing updates section.